are listening to Fika with Vicky on United Public Radio, 107.7 and 105.3 from New Orleans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fika. Our guest today is Kim M. Watt. Kim's the author of the Gobelino London PI series, The Beaufort Scales, a cozy mystery series with dragons, and What Happened in London, a D.I. Adams prequel. Yes, Kim's books are full of dragons, talking cats, cake and tea, wit and mysteries, but there's something beneath that magic, a subtle strand connecting us to this world. The idea that there are people who believe if we cared for each other, if we understood the stories of those who are different than ourselves, and perhaps put aside past grievances, the world would truly be magical. And I believe that Kim M. Watt is one of them, creating magic in this world with each of her books. Welcome to Fika, Kim.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. It's awesome.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this, and you've been a great sport with the tech issues that we had earlier. So, thank you for that. Okay,
No worries. Hopefully, it's all going to be fine now.
everything will be great. It's just going to be wonderful. Before our conversation gets started, and since I'm in a D.I. Adams mode, would you mind giving our listeners and watchers a briefing on your books?
Absolutely. So, yeah, at the moment, there's kind of two series, plus the D.I. Adams book, which is planned to be the start of another series. Um, and so the Beaufort Scales series was the first one that I started with, and it's a cozy mystery with dragons. So it does follow the sort of cozy mystery of small towns, tea parties, ladies of a certain age, but with dragons. So just something a little bit different. And then there's the Gobelino London series, which is follows the adventures of a scruffy PI and his human, because the PI happens to be a cat. And that's set in Leeds. So all the books are set around Yorkshire, which is north of England. Other than the D.I. Adams, which is actually a prequel to the Beaufort Scales series, following the detective inspector before she became a detective inspector and before she came to Yorkshire.
And I'm so glad you wrote that because reading reading the Beaufort Scales first book, Baking Bad, I was just the whole book. It kept saying after what happened in London. And I was like, what happened in London? Like I need to
Oh,
know.
I waited ages to write that book because I was just like, yeah, something definitely happened in London because I keep saying it. So what happened?
And there a lot happened in London, people. Okay,
It
a lot happened
did.
in London. But if you haven't started with her series yet, I might suggest you start with that one before going into Beaufort because then you won't be doing what I did. Now, you also have an analogy. You also have a book of short stories called Oddly Enough. That's out there. And I haven't had a chance to venture into it yet, but I'm going to because I'm sure with everything else I read, it's spectacular. Can you tell us a little bit how that came about?
Um, yeah, so for me, short stories are they're playing basically. So there's a lot less time investment of time and the building of sort of intricate plots and that kind of thing in a short story. So for me, often between novels, it's a really fun way just to get my creativity going. So I really enjoy writing short stories. And although they don't seem to be as popular now as far as people don't buy them as much as maybe they once used to, I still, yeah, I really enjoyed them and I enjoy writing them. And often they'll also become something larger. So the Beaufort Scales series started as a short story. The Gobelino London series started as a short story. So often it's how I discover characters and discover the ideas that sort of carry me forward into the next books.
And you you obviously love to write. Like that is obviously you found your passion, no doubt. Because if my count's right, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've written 14 books in 3 years, 15 with the short stories.
15 with the short stories. Yeah. Um,
How do you do
yeah.
that?
I often wonder. um, yeah, I'm often sort of thinking I could do a lot more. I could write a lot more, but I seem to keep moving and moving countries a lot in the middle of all of this. So it's yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm particularly good at setting a schedule. My editor will confirm that. The amount of times I've sort of said, oh, I'm just really sorry, can we just push this back by a month? So yeah, as to how I do it, it's I put the time in basically. I prioritize my writing time. I prioritize the work that needs to be done for the books because these days it is my full-time job. It is what I do, and so I do treat it as a job. I don't sort of write when I feel like writing. I write when I need to.
And the pressure obviously works for you. Like
It
no
does, and
writing, no tea. It works that way.
basically, yeah, yeah. Or I might have to switch to off-brand tea, and I mean that would be a disaster.
I don't know because after there's Kim does put a warning at the beginning of Baking Bad that you will be craving cakes. But I feel like she should be putting a whole lot more warnings on there because like I want Yorkshire tea now, but I have to go to a special store to get it, and I didn't have time to do that. Also, toasties, cheese toasties, which are grilled cheese in North America. I'm just that's worse than the cakes, Kim. That it's just like every toasties. And I'm like,
Oh,
I want
but they're
toasties.
so good.
For dinner, we're having toasties. Okay. Whether they're fancy or not, I don't care. But I told my husband, pick up some more bread on the way home because this is what we're having for supper. Okay, that's the way
Oh,
it
you
is.
can't go past it. You can't.
So, so yes, you just it, it's a priority, and you make it so, and you just write. There's no
Yeah,
question.
I mean, it's. I think that there is a certain mix. So there are days when, for whatever reason, my headspace isn't right, and I sort of build that into the expectations of when I am writing, of knowing that I also need to take that time to step back. And also, as an indie author, there's other work that I have to be doing as well as the books. So there's advertising and there's work around publishing that still needs to be done. So I do try and make a schedule. I do try and stick to it, but
Then
often
you
it doesn't
move.
necessarily work. Yeah, exactly. Then I move, or I have these amazing ideas. Like when I just at the end of March, I actually moved back to France from New Zealand, and somehow I thought that I would arrive in France at the end of March, and by the end of April, I'd have two. Somehow I had it in my head that I would have two books, one with the editor and the other one almost finished. And I actually don't know how I think time works sometimes.
It just happened.
Yeah.
Just magically, Kim. You did it magically. That's how it happened.
Honestly, this was the problem. I didn't do it, but I thought I would.
Well, you know, it happens. Can you just a little bit louder, please?
Oh, sorry.
No, no,
Yes.
no, that's okay. Don't worry about being too loud. Too loud is good. I want people to hear you. You have great words coming out of your mouth, and they should be heard.
Honestly, I'm much better writing. I'm louder writing as well, probably.
Um, so have you always had an interest in magical, um, magical creatures and mysteries, so that you combine them? Like this isn't an accident. This is what you like.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the magical side of things. So I grew up on the Moomin Troll books, which I don't know if you know of them, but they're quite a beautiful oh, now I'm going to forget. I think she was a Norwegian woman that wrote them. But they were about these little strange little creatures, the Moomin trolls, which lived in
Oh,
the
the moon. Yes, I
little
love the
woods.
Moomins.
Oh, there we go, perfect. So I sort of grew up on them, and then on Narnia, and then into Lord of the Rings and that sort of thing. So I was a big fan of fantasy when I was younger. Um, Honestly, I'm not entirely sure where the mystery came from, but it just seemed to work when I started writing. And so, yeah, that combination somehow of having, I think what the mystery did was it gave me something that grounded the story, grounded the magic within this world, and
Right.
something that sort of made sort of a human kind of logical sense. And then you could build the magic around it. And that's how it worked for me with those.
No, no, that makes perfect. Great answer, Kim. Great answer. Brian Greiner would like to know, do the different cultures you've lived in get reflected in your writing?
That's a really good question. So I'm originally from New Zealand. I sort of grew up there, between there and I lived on a boat that my dad built for quite a while as well. So I traveled a lot when I was young. But I actually left New Zealand when I was 18 and then worked in various countries. Um, and somehow I find the books are quite well grounded in Yorkshire, which is a place that I love and I've come back to many times over the years and lived there at various times. Um, I was married to a Yorkshireman. I was also in a long-term relationship with another Yorkshireman, so there's obviously something there.
So it's a
Which is
reoccurring theme.
definitely, which is where the Yorkshire tea came from, and also some of the expressions. um, but to me, they are fairly grounded in the sort of north of England. All of those books, there's a certain magic there for me, which I find very, yeah, it does spark creativity.
And Ben says, there are so many similarities between Kiwi and Yorkshire culture, to be honest. And do you find that too?
There's definitely similarities between New Zealand and English, I'll say, rather than, although probably is fairly UK wide. There's certainly a strong connection as far as the sense of humour can be very similar. Um, and yeah, as far as, you know, Yorkshire's got a lot of sheep, New Zealand's got a lot of sheep, that sort of thing.
It all comes down to sheep. Okay. Um, in the world of writing, in the world of books recently, especially with cozy mysteries, there are always cats and more cats. And which is great. But for some reason, your cat is a detective and it talks. Okay. It's not sitting on the side or making looks. We can actually, that's what the cat does. Not for everyone, but for the reading audience and his partner. Uh, I'm a woman of a certain age, and I started reading these books, and it never even made me bat an eye that the cat was talking. Like it just seemed so natural that the cat would be talking. And how do you do that, Kim? How do you make throwing and dragons to tea? Like the magic is just so, I need to know that other people also had no problem with the talking cat. Like I would feel much better about myself if I knew that. That's a special talent.
Well, certainly I have no problem with the talking cat, so at least there's two of us. So um cats are, I mean, I love cats, obviously. I don't currently have a cat, but I did have a black cat who I used to refer to as the little fairy muse, who I just always have the sense that they have great and secret lives, which we don't get to see. Um, and within the world that I work in, it just made sense that they were up to things, that somehow that just worked
Oh
in
yes.
there for me. And it just seemed quite logical that if anyone in that world was going to talk and be up to strange things, it was going to be the cats.
Most definitely. And you have the cat personality down pat. Like the part where, I sat elegantly straight up on the edge of the desk. It's like this cat thinking. My cat does that all the time and judges. Like,
Oh yes,
that is a big
definitely.
judge. So
Oh, they all are.
yeah, no, it's absolutely great. And let me tell you, I want to have Fika with a cat because what a great excuse to be snarky and mean. Right. It's not my fault. The cat did it.
This is the thing. I mean, writing Gobolino is it is just pure joy writing him because yes, you can be really snarky and quite judgmental and make terrible observations about people when it comes from the cat.
Absolutely lovely characters. They're just absolutely lovely people. And then there's the cat. Also consider a person for the sake of this, but you do it so well, Kim. Like that. You enjoyed writing it. I enjoyed reading it. I'm just like, it was very believable and very much part from the story. It didn't take away from the story. It was just happened to be a cat. So definitely a fantastic way to go.
Thank you. It was potentially a bit of a risk.
What's that?
It was potentially a bit of a risk. I mean, I often look back at things that I write and I'll write them because they sound right in my head. And when I'm in the middle of them, I'm having fun and I'm enjoying the creation and it grows. And it's often later that I'll sort of look back at it and go, I just published a book from the point of view of a cat. What was I thinking?
You were thinking success, girl. You were thinking success. And that's what I want the audience to know. Don't sit there and say, I'm too sophisticated for books where the cats talk or they have dragons to tea. Because I read a lot and it did not faze me. And I'm just going around. The book is so good. It just did not faze me that any of this was happening. It just seemed proper and right. So you obviously have a talent for making that happen. So do not think they're funny books. They're not silly books. There's a big difference in that. And you're a funny person. Very, very funny. Back to the writing. Now, D.I. Adams, who I absolutely love as a character, has mentioned several times that she doesn't like to use modern technology to keep hold of her information while solving crime. She likes Post-its and like she likes Post-its and printouts and a notebook to write all this down because the tactile experience obviously connects her to the crime more and she can solve it. Is this something that you prefer to do when writing? Are you more a scribble down the ideas than having different programs?
A mix. I especially if I'm getting stuck on something, I will write it out longhand, and longhand sort of taps into a different sort of creativity, I guess. So I find it really good for writing short stories when I'm just kind of running around after the story and seeing what happens. I find it really good for getting through plot points. And when I have written a rough draft and I go back, even if I do write the rough draft on the computer, I tend to go back and then I'll make all my notes are handwritten. I don't make notes on the computer or anything like that, which I know there are lots of apps in order to do that, but that's just, it doesn't work. That's far too complicated. And yeah, due to my travels as well, I often find I will end up writing longhand. So D.I. Adams actually was written in a notebook to start with. I had it as a hard copy, and I actually was about a year late in publishing it because the notebook was in the UK and I was in New Zealand, and I was just like, well, I can't rewrite that because I won't remember. And all the little bits that I really liked, I won't have. So I had to wait until I could get the notebook before I could actually write the book.
Well, I'm glad you waited and didn't try to remember it because it's a gem. And her character is so real. I mean, I love her. I know I'm supposed to love all the characters. No, you're supposed to love all the characters. I can do what I
Yes,
want.
no favorites.
But she is my favorite. Not taking anything away from anybody, she's just so down to earth, and she doesn't want the gifts that she's been given. Like, no, 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 no. And sometimes we don't have a choice. I do, however, like the part that you can grow gifts stronger. You can see things in a different way, more clearly, with the help of chocolate. this is,
Chocolate is magic.
it is. I always thought it was good for the soul. And this just proves that it's also good for other, things that we might not see. And it works. And well, okay, so while we're talking about writing, are you a plotter? Do you get it all out there, or are you a pantser? Do you just let it flow?
I am 100% a pantser. I have tried many times over the years to plot, uh, partly because certainly in my early days of writing, when I was reading every single book about how to write better, the general wisdom was like, oh, you must plot, because otherwise there'll be plot holes and it'll be a terrible mess and everything else. And so I tried, and I tried many times. And what would happen was I'd sort of get the characters in place, and then they'd just stand there and they wouldn't do anything. And if I tried to make them do things, they'd be really wooden and awful, and it just didn't work. And so either I'd have to go back and start again, or I'd just kind of start ignoring the plot, and then the characters would start sort of running off and doing things. And all that time I'd spent plotting would just be completely wasted. So I have resigned myself to the fact that I am a pantser. I completely write by the seat of my pants. I tend to have the end scene in my head, which is quite often a bit chaotic. This seems to be my sort of brand, is chaotic end scenes. And I'll have a starting point, and sometimes the starting point will be a scene, or it will be a line, or it can be something as simple as that. And I just start writing towards that end. It does mean that after my rough draft, quite often when I sit down and make my notes, that's when I kind of put things into either a sort of a 3-act, sort of the classic 3-act save the cat thing, or a plot circle or something like that, just to make sure that I'm hitting the plot points when I need to. So often there's rewriting required at that stage. So it can be a bit of a longer process, I guess, than if I plotted it right from the start. But for me, it's more natural, more organic. And so I've kind of accepted that I have to do that little extra bit of work in order that I get this sort of story at its heart when I first start out.
Well, you're just doing the work in the middle instead of the beginning.
Like, yeah, there's that.
You let them go and then you round them up, because when you said it was completely organic, I was very surprised, because all the details are there, and it does a circle around so well to, and you're picking up this and you're picking up that, and you're thinking, oh, she did that very well. Like that's come up, and that end of a string that I didn't even really see there, you make clear to us at the end, and how it all works together. So whatever you're doing is working, but I'm surprised that it is more, but great things come from chaos, right? It's which I tell myself. So yeah, no, great. It works. It works. What you're doing is work. Don't ever change it, Kim. Don't ever change it.
Thank you. I shall continue with the chaos. Personally, I enjoy the chaos anyway, because it's I can't remember whose quote it was, but it was something about no surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. And there is something delightful about when you're writing along and you're chasing these characters, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, that bit that I put back there, it's just come into play here. This is awesome. And there's something really exciting about that.
So you're watching it being written instead of actually doing it. Well, no, I mean, because you would be able to obtain more excitement if you don't know what's going to happen, right?
Exactly.
So your excitement, your passion and thrill is going on to the readers.
Yeah, I definitely like to think that because, yeah, I do have a lot of fun writing them. So I hope that comes across in the reading as well.
Well, I read them and I think it came across.
Excellent.
One thumb up here. Well, I mean, all the fingers up here. Okay. What does Mr. Griner have to say now? I quite like the covers of your books. I agree. I like them too. Simple yet eye-catching. Do you do your own covers or do you hire an illustrator?
Well, thank you for that. I love the covers as well. I have an amazing cover designer who is, I think she's a bit of an author whisperer, actually, because you sort of say to her, well, I need a cat and a man. It needs to be sort of magically. And somehow she translates magically and makes it all work. So, yeah, she's brilliant. I did, when I first started out, have a go at making my own covers, and I am not I am not a cover designer. I discovered that very quickly.
You don't know till you try.
There we go.
We talk about that, do it yourself publishing, and as the world continues, authors have to be business people, art, like so many things. So some things you do, some things you contract out. That's just like the house, right?
Exactly. And it is an art form. Good cover design it's an art form. There's so many elements that go into it to capture that essence of the story, and yet make it something that you can see it in a thumbnail on Amazon, and it stands out, and yet it forms part of your brand. So there's not too much, there's variation, but not too much variation. And yeah, no, that's way too complicated for me. I'll stick with cats.
I'm getting exhausted just hearing you go talk about it. It's like too much thinking. She just wants to write a book, people.
Yeah.
That's the way it is now. People don't understand how much. And on top of that, you're supposed to do social networking
Yes.
to keep people's interest. And Lord knows what else. There's no time.
Build websites.
There's no time for toasties and tea.
There's always time for toasties and tea.
Well, I'm making time today, even though it won't be Yorkshire because I have to go out to get that. Your characters, and I think that's part of why we believe that the cat can talk. I'm going to keep coming back to that because I still can't get over the fact I just went, talking cat, let's move on. I think the reason people believe that the cat can talk and that dragons come to tea is because their characters are so strong. And your characters, I'm not talking strong as in they're brave, they're courageous. They just leave an imprint. That's it. Mm-hmm. Your characters leave an imprint. Now, in Baking Bad and the Beaufort Scales series, this is there. We work with the Women's Institute, the WI, and they are a force to be reckoned with, and nobody messes with them because there's somebody's mother or there's somebody's aunt, and they just do what they want because they rule things.
Pretty much.
Now, I grew up in a rural area, and we had the Women's Institute, and lovely, lovely ladies, but nobody told them what to do. Like, this is what's happening. This is how we're going to raise money. So-and-so's going to do this. So I was laughing so loud because you captured that so perfectly in your writing. And do you think of yourself as, I'm not, I think of you as this. So you're not saying, oh, I'm wonderful. But do you think that you're a good observer of human behavior? Like, how do you make these characters, even the cat, I know that cat. That cat before. Like they're just, how do you bring that realism to your characters?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would say that I think most writers, to be honest, are pretty good observers because that's sort of how you gather it. You notice people's quirks and tendencies, and that just slowly becomes absorbed and comes out in different characters. Um, and yeah, for me, the characters are very real. I write about characters that I would want to read about and that interest me. Because if they're not complex enough to interest me as a writer, uh, I'm not going to enjoy writing about them, and they're not going to be very interesting to the reader. So to me, that's just a key part of the story. The characters have to be someone that you'd want to sit down and have a cup of tea and a scone with, or a bowl of custard if it's the cat.
Even just to see what they're going to do next.
Exactly.
There is stuff going on here. Rachel Patterson says, absolutely love the Beaufort Scales series.
Oh, thank you, Rachel.
And I'm bringing this up here because it was on Rachel's Facebook page that I learned about your books. She had put up a post saying, you know, please people read these books. You have to read these books. And so I said, okay. And I trust Rachel's
fantastic.
So I read the books and I was like, yeah, I can see that connection with cakes and laughter and so people do pay attention when you write on your Facebook pages. I really love that book, people. So keep doing that. Read these books. Tell other people that you love them. Because you will.
That is the most wonderful not just recommendation, and which is obviously fantastic as an author, but just the most wonderful sort of reinforcement to hear that people are enjoying the books, because then you just want to go and write more books. So
well, I don't think, and I've said this before, excuse me, I'm sorry, I think we have a lot of dust and smog happening because of a fire situation in the north of the country, and I don't know, I think it's affecting. So that's my excuse, people. I apologize for the clearing of the throat. Okay, I think that people don't understand enough that authors are people. Like, you know, we've grown up putting them on a pedestal, and this is wonderful, and they need school, and you don't mark up the books, and you don't do this, and you're really just people sitting all alone writing these books. So definitely go out there and say, I loved your books in some way. Message, well, just on Facebook, say, I loved your book. You know, like go follow Kim on Facebook and just put little hearts and things on her stuff, and she will feel so much happier. You think she's happy now? See her after that. So go after the show, but go do that.
It definitely makes the most wonderful difference to hear from readers. It's yeah, fantastic. It's one of the best bits.
It does, because there are people trying, and you don't get a lot of feedback. It's not like, oh, that was a great burger. For hours you send it out there, and then, you know, sometimes you wait and it's just like an echo. Nothing happening. So fill that empty space. All right, so we've laughed, and these books are funny, but the more I read them, Kim, the more I see, as I mentioned in the introduction, this underlining attention. Well, because D.I. Adams is who she is, and even with the dragons, and you know, people keeping the dragons safe because mankind has a tendency to go and kill them. In the past, that's brought up some bad feelings between them. And D.I. There's addiction brought up in the Gobelino London series. And D.I. Adams definitely is working the streets, and she's believing some unhoused people when nobody else will, because they just ignore them. There's even like some racist issues brought to the attention. So under all this happiness and laughter, there are some very heavy subjects being addressed. Uh, Once again, so did this just come out of your heart as you wrote? I mean, you say you don't plot, but these are really big elements, or did you sort of sneak them in there?
Um, no, again, there's something that came in naturally for me because these are things which I think concern all of us, whether it's questions of, like Mortimer with his stress shedding and the anxiety and the worries that you have. These are things that we all know. They're things that connect us as humans. And that's such an important thing, is that it's so easy to be divided. It's so easy to have this sense of there's us and there's others. And to me, it's a really important thing. It's one of those themes that is just always going to be in the work, that because someone is different, because someone is struggling with addiction, or is struggling with mental health, or because someone's unhoused or is from a different background, everyone's still just people. And that to me is just really important, and to show it's not something I deliberately set out to show, but it's something that has come across in the books, because to me, to leave it out, to ignore it, would make it quite unnatural, because it's
You
everywhere.
you can't, because it's a part. If you're out in the world, it's a
Mm,
part of the world. You
yeah,
really can't go many places without that being present. So to lead, and if you're trying to make a fantasy more realistic, then the real needs to be definitely real.
yeah.
And so I found that you wrote those parts naturally and with understanding and with balance. And it wasn't until I fell asleep last night finishing off what happened in London. Like, as in, I woke up with my reading device on top of me.
Oh
So
no.
I didn't sleep on the story overnight. It literally slept on me. And it's it's difficult because there's places I want to discuss, but I don't want to put spoilers out there. But when I woke up this morning, my subconscious working away as I slept, I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Now I want to. So I'm trying desperately to find a way to put across what I saw in your story when I woke up this morning. But it was definitely the idea that, like, I mean, chocolate makes things clearer, but that when you look into a different lifestyle, a different way of living, it is almost like looking into a different dimension, a different world. It makes everything just a little confusing and a little, we don't know how people do things here. So if someone's looking into the home of the unhoused, or one of these other a different thing, even if you're looking at people who have everything, you're not going to see it clearly. It's going to put your idea of life out of whack. So I think you were amazing in doing that.
Thank you.
And I can't go the other places I want to go. But I think I'm going to have to start something where I can discuss these books with other people that have read them, like co-read
Yeah,
him books.
spoiler episodes or something.
Yes, like, it drives me crazy. I just there were things in that book. People, go read D.I. Adams now. It won't spoil the rest. It won't spoil Breaking Bad or the rest of the series. Go read it, and then come over to me on Facebook and message me on Fika with Vicky, because I need to talk about it. I will be emailing him saying, "Okay, I gotta get this out of my system." Once again, I want to know if other people saw what I saw, or if you wanted it to be interpreted that way. So, anyways, I'm sorry I got sidetracked on that, but it's very frustrating. was I? Kim, where was I?
So, because I've got sidetracked now, because I'm sort of going, are you thinking what I'm thinking, or is it?
Okay, I'm saying no. I can't say anything. I can't say anything.
Email me.
I want to be Amazon now. I want to see Amazon because I just see the numbers. Or yes, right, or Kudo, I mean not Kudo, or Kobo, or Google, or wherever. Where do you have your books out there?
They are everywhere, or everywhere I can put them, basically. So yes, they are obviously on Amazon, but they're also available on Kobo, Barnes and Noble. The paper, you can also ask your library to get them in. The library can get, they're available as ebooks through library programs. And the paperbacks are also available to be bought by the libraries as well. So there's distribution there. And the Both at Scales books actually amazingly have been turned into audiobooks by an audiobook company in the UK. So they can also be got through the library too, as well as everywhere you get your audiobooks. So yeah, you can find them in most places.
So they're easy to get. But I will tell you where I got the box set, the first 4, it was just $9.99. So that's like $2.50 a book. Well worth it. Well worth the money. And I'm going to get the other books after. Sometimes there are people in my life that say I treat Brian badly, but this is because he's sarcastic. Can Kim confirm or deny that something happens to someone somewhere?
I can neither confirm nor deny that. It's really hard being an author as well, because sometimes I've just sent off the final Gobelino London to my editor, and so I know what happens in it, but I can't say anything. And sometimes you slip up and you're kind of like, oh no, I can't say that. You don't know that yet.
I can totally understand that. I would be going bonkers. I wrote this book and I love this little part, and you just want to share that little part, right? That you wrote, that quote, or whatever it was. So I can understand how that would be a problem, Kim. Now, you also promised that you're going to be having more series coming out. Can you say anything about that?
Well, at the moment, my plans, assuming I don't move any more countries, that's not planned anyway. So I have the final Gobelino book is actually coming out in July. Following that, the final Gobelino book for this series arc, I should say, because I have so much fun writing him that I can't rule out the idea that I may write another series arc for them in the future, because they're just so much fun. There will also be the Beaufort series is ongoing. My plan for that is kind of 1 book a year, because Beaufort takes a certain energy, which is a bit different to some of the other books. So I find that I need to space them out a bit, and then hopefully they'll stay really fresh as well, so I can keep going with them for quite a while. And then D.I. Adams is my next project. So starting from early next year.
I was hoping you would say that. I was just sitting here going, please.
So yes, I want to start a series arc with her starting next year. And there will also be another short story collection in the future, but I'm not quite sure when yet. I'm not putting any dates on that one.
So I'm glad to hear all the other ones are still continuing. Well, you said this was the last one for Gobelino?
Yes, and July will be the last Gobelino book for this series, and then we'll just see.
But the D.I. Adams is fantastic. It's fantastic news. And we're going to the point is that D.I. Adams, the point in my mind, people, okay, D.I. Adams is a step away from the other books in a way. It is more, perhaps deeper, possibly darker. Does it take a different part of you to write? Was that different?
Yeah. It's interesting because each of them does take a different energy. So it's a different mindset as I go into the books. It's, so for both it is quite light. There's lots of tea parties. But then as we discussed before, there's other things going on beneath the surface as well. So it's balancing that. Whereas D.I. Adams, I think those things can be a little closer to the surface because she's much more to outside the world of Toot Hansel to a certain extent, because Toot Hansel, the village in which the Both of Scales series is set, is kind of a very idealized cozy mystery village. It's ringed about with little rivers, and it's got a bottomless pond there's geese in there. You don't go near the bottomless pond, and so there's magic within that town. Whereas she is a very practical person who's grown up in a city, and she has a very different perspective on things. So yeah, it does take a different energy to write hers, but it's great fun as well. I enjoy exploring the world through her eyes as opposed to a cat's eyes or dragons.
I don't think you've really have a writing career until you've written a mystery series about a small village in England, have you? So many things happen in those small villages. I think they're quaint and wonderful, but I don't want to live there.
That's very dangerous. Very dangerous.
Every time you turn around, like you can just see the population sign going.
Yeah.
So I think that was necessary. But yes, it is very idealistic, and that's nice. I have a new slogan for you, Kim, the writer that suits each of your moods, right? If you want idealistic, it is. It's such a nice range of different moods, right? Moods is the right word. I am somewhat distracted because I still want to ask Kim some things, and I swear we are going to have a spoilers show, Kim. Everybody, read these books, and then we're going to come back and discuss them. I have to address, my husband has commented, Vicky, you seem to have a thing for people that write about cats. Well, yes, we do have a cat, and I will mention Luna, dear. Luna is very important to our household, but everybody writes about cats. So not that you're not special, Kim, but it doesn't give me a lot of leeway to find people who don't write about cats.
This is the thing. Cats get everywhere. Yeah, I'm telling you that there's definitely something up there.
Well, definitely, if it was, how people are like in Egypt, cats were worshipped. Well, and their pictures in that were drawn on. I came to that conclusion the other when Papaya, they drew on the plant paper. Pictures of cats, and now they're all over the internet. So definitely, if someone was looking at this from the future, they're going to say we worship cats, and maybe we do. Maybe we do. Are you part of a writing group, formal or informal? From Brian. I find that our little group is essential for keeping me motivated. Oh, thank you, Brian. I'm part of that group. Do you belong to a group? Yeah.
I do not actually. In the days when I was still on Twitter, which I left a while ago simply because it took up too much headspace and I ended up on there too much. I used to chat with a lot of writers. We weren't in a formal writing group at all, but sometimes we'd swap critiques and that sort of thing. But these days I'm not. I have my beta readers who are fantastic, and they're who give me feedback on sort of the earlier versions of the book. But other than that, it's sort of me and my cup of tea.
Well, you're motivated by the editors who are like, and the fact that you're doing this full time. You see, retirement is a setback, right? Because Kim still has to get there. So it really depends on the people, I think, how motivational it is. And Brian has exceptional people in his group, like me, and the time that you have, right? Rachel says, I would live there for the cake and dragons. Yes, it is a lovely world. Honestly, I'm I'm doing a spoiler show because I just have to talk about these things and I can't.
Just not
Okay.
Jasmine's cake. Just skip Jasmine's cake. That's the only thing.
There's all kinds of different cakes. There's Spanish. No, I agree with the mincemeat pie, even though it's not Christmas. Mortimer has my vote on this. It's like, there's mincemeat pie and it's not even Christmas. Well, oh, okay, I can share that. I don't give my husband, if I can keep him in the little box on the side. He wants to know if, since you're from New Zealand, did you ever visit where they filmed The Lord of the Rings? Because you mentioned that earlier, that you grew up on The Lord of the Rings.
I did not. So there is obviously the big Hobbiton tour that you can do and that kind of thing. But oddly, I've never, I guess the movies weren't such a big thing for me. So, I mean, they were good and I enjoyed them. But yeah, the book was kind of my thing. And so going to see the movie set and that was never really a big draw for me.
Well, because it was impossible to really put the books into movies. There's so much there. And books are never the movies. They're never ever as good because you can't get all that thought and stuff. They need to make a TV series about a mystery series about Beaufort Scales and the town.
Netflix.
Oh, who do we talk to? Like, I can put this in motion because I watch all these shows and I'm running out, and I would definitely like to watch that one. I think it's been short. You just started writing it in 2018. I don't know how they would do the dragons. I love the dragons, by the way. I want them. I was talking to my son about it. And he's like, "Well, how did the dragons get into a car?" I told him, but the rest of you have to understand that 2 dragons can fit into a car.
They can, even when the car in question is a proper vintage VW Beetle. You can still get dragons in there.
Right, and that's going to leave an image in everybody's mind. Oh, Brian says that he much preferred the parody novel Board of the Rings to the original books. Yes, Brian, I know how you feel about Tolkien, and that is why I mean to you. I happen to agree. I also happen to agree with your reading list. Like the Moomins are absolutely, she's amazing. The Lord of the Rings, although I have to admit that it's way too descriptive for me, so I sometimes like.
Oh, I was a very strange kid. It's growing up on the boat. Obviously, we didn't have, there was no TV or anything, and although I had lots of stuff I could do on the water, as far as being out on the dinghy or that kind of thing, when we were on passages, all I'd do is read, and so all my spare time was reading. So yeah, Lord of the Rings, great big book, keep me amused for ages, perfect.
Yeah, no, I mean, what a unique and I would think adventurous way of growing up. Like, what were some of the countries you visited while you were on the boat?
So we're based in the South Pacific, so it was all because my dad was actually working in Tonga, which is really, for people that don't know, it's a very small country sort of near Fiji, so just to the east of Fiji. And so we spent a lot of time there. So it was sort of Tonga, Fiji, Samoa, Vanuatu, New Caledonia, across to Australia, and we sort of were in that area for about 5 years. So until I was 13, we went back to New Zealand. So yeah, it was fantastic. It was, and certainly for a kid who's a bit imaginative anyway, I spent a lot of time making up stories.
Yeah, no, I was thinking that would, even if you weren't imaginative, that would encourage you to be so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But oh, I'm so impressed with you, the books. It's all absolutely fabulous. So was there anything else that you wanted to get out there that people should know about?
Oh, oh no, I don't know. Mostly I've spent sort of the last week. I'm going to be on a radio show, and I don't know how to do this, and I'm panicking. So
I told you
basically,
not
I'm
to
just.
panic. Look
I always panic.
Okay, so from now on, so you feel at home. Fika is chaos. I never know. I make up questions, but I never know where it's going to go. Sometimes I shouldn't read the books right before the show because I get carried away by the book. It's like immediately, and I'm talking to the author, and I'm just like, no one else exists. Just that me in the book. So we don't know where the conversation is going to go. But this has been a lovely one, just like tea in your books.
It has been fantastic.
They are wonderful, and so are you. And I've got to work something out because we need to have spoiler episodes where we can talk about the books and only. I mean, I'm not sure if the station manager will like that. Restricts the viewership of the listeners.
Private broadcast.
Okay, turn it off now if you haven't. But it has been absolutely lovely, and I've really enjoyed having you here. And yeah, we need to talk again.
Yes, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. I mean, absolutely, I was terrified because the whole thing was very new. I was like, oh, technology and people, and oh no, it's horrifying. I'm a writer. I don't talk. I write.
You did.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
And now go do other radio shows or whatever, because you've got this under your belt. Tell the world about your wonderful books. Okay? You take care, and we'll talk later. Okay, Kim?
And
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks very much. Bye.
Okay. Next week, let me move ahead in the book because I'm still thinking about it. Our guest next week is MJ Moores. MJ is the author of Adventure, regardless of their genres. We'll be focusing on her Demon series, which has been described as Men in Black meets Supernatural. And I'd have to agree with that. We're also going to discuss her editing experiences, which includes freelancing to indie authors. Why do you want an editor? What can you expect from an editor? And what can that editor expect from you? I hope you enjoyed the show today, because I certainly did. And until next week, may your coffee be hot and your story sweet. Thank you for listening, everyone. And we're going to go to the music in just a second.